Erica King from Crypto Soul, and welcome back to the Erica Show. It's been a while since my birthday episode, and today in episode 29, I'm here with Adrian Brink, founder of Anoma Protocol. And Adrian has achieved lots of things in the blockchain space, and his recent new project seems very exciting. So extremely thankful to have him on the show and learn more about what he's up to. So Adrian, hi, it's been a while.
Hello.
It's been a while. How have you been? And I've known you since 2017. We go a long way back.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember?
That's true. That's a long time by now.
Yeah, and we've been connected ever since. So yeah, I really love to hear really deeply about your trajectory and what you're currently up to. So before we go in, could you do a short intro about yourself and say hi to the viewers?
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet anonymous viewers on the internet. I can start with a brief intro. So I originally got into the space because I was looking for a topic to write my master thesis on in computer science, and I ended up writing it on e-voting on blockchains. This was sort of the time of the Catalan independence referendum, where the people of Catalonia wanted to secede from Spain, and the Spanish federal police brutally suppressed that vote in person. So I thought it'd be cool if you can have censorship-resistant e-voting systems. By the way, there are lots of problems with e-voting systems in general. So I don't claim I built a secure e-voting system, because everyone in computer science will tell you that's a stupid idea and you should all go back to pen and paper. I have rarely met a computer scientist who believes that e-voting can ever be done securely. But anyway, this led me down to Ethereum, because I was really the only smart contract platform at the time, right? This was like when 2016, 17, when I started on this. And really the basic idea is, as soon as you have uncensorable technology, lots of things become possible, which, for example, in the context of elections, is that, if 95% of a population vote one way and they all know that the other people around them vote the same way, there's very little a government can do to ever stop the will of the people effectively. Currently, this is mostly done via censoring the election, so you're never sure whether the people around you believe the same thing as you. But once you remove this, there are lots of interesting possibilities with regards to direct democracy. So this is how I got into the space. This led me down a strange rabbit hole of Tendermint consensus, and then I messaged Jay on the early Cosmos Slack. I was like, I know how to code. Do you need help? Cosmos looks cool. This was before all the ICO started. And yeah, then I joined Cosmos Tendermint as the third engineer, I think. Built up that stack. And then later on, we built up a validator company with Awa and Chris called Cryptium Labs, which we sold earlier this year. I think probably at these prices. I know. I'm so happy that I love validation, proof of stake and everything, but I'm also glad that I don't have to worry about this anymore.
Tell me more later.
I'm very happy that we ended up selling it.
Yes.
And I think at the peak we probably had $500 million under management current market prices.
Wow.
Because we were and it was interesting because we were one of the very first validator companies in the space. This was when 2018, all of crypto thought the US dollar was going to collapse, and I moved to Switzerland to hide in the Alps. This is also where we created the company, because we had to better hide hotkeys with lots of money on them than Switzerland.
Sure.
But yeah, it was crazy. Then what I did do after, we also built out the second core, the FT1 Tezos, scaled that to 15 people, did a bunch of research in zero knowledge proofs, programming languages, just basic engineering. So we shipped every major upgrade to Tezos in conjunction with Nomadic Labs, which was crazy because I'd written a bunch of code in OCaml that stepped over every single account. I was like, well, if this blows up, this deletes $4 billion of market cap, just like that. It's hopefully this works. So blockchains are really not well tested enough to support trillions of dollars of market cap, in my opinion. It's kind of terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
But really in the middle of 2020, I sat down together with Awa and Chris, and we thought about what we wanted to do going forward. And really, Chris came from the background of having built the backend to OpenSea. So OpenSea is built on a protocol called the Wyvern Dex protocol. No one knows about this because it doesn't have a token, so no one gives a shit. But like OpenSea is the front end to a DEX protocol called the Wyvern DEX protocol in Ethereum that allows you to do this incredibly flexible end-party trade systems, where you can like trade 3 blue cryptocurrencies against 2 CryptoPunks, which must be no less than a year old. And I always wanted to get out of the space. It's that like I can take my phone and replace my wallet with it. It always seemed stupid to me that I can't use like Bitcoin or ETH or like a digital Swiss franc to privately pay, right? Like you always had to opt into specific monetary policies like ZEC or Monero in order to achieve privacy. And so we combined this, and out of this came Anoma, which is really, it's a layer 1 protocol built around the premise that blockchains will be interoperable. There's no way around this. There's no way in hell that we're like moving all of global commerce onto one blockchain. We don't have a one world government for the same reason, as we're not going to move all global commerce onto ETH2, no matter how technically scalable it may be. And really the premise is of Anoma, once you have assets that can flow through these systems and move between blockchains, Anoma is there to provide perfect digital private asset agnostic cash. So give you the cash-like properties, but for any asset that you want to bring, whether this is like a USDT or an NFT, like your transaction to move your house to a different wallet or to sell your house has the same privacy guarantees as all the coffee shop payments, all the hundreds of millions of coffee shop payments in the world. And the second aspect of Anoma is that it allows you to do private bartering. So it removes the need for base money effectively, because traditionally in sort of the traditional exchange world, you have to have the most liquid pair. So like everyone picks a liquid pair against like USDT or USDC, depending on the exchange. And when you want to switch between like, let's say DOT and Solana, you go via USDT.
Yeah.
With Anoma, you don't have to do this anymore, because in the scenario where Alice holds like some Bitcoin and wants ETH, and Bob holds ETH and wants NIA, and Charlie holds NIA and wants Bitcoin, in Anoma, you can just settle this atomically, and this scales to n parties. This can be like 100 parties. And as long as there's like a way to match all these intents together, you can just directly settle this. This general, there's lots more interesting things about like how specific Anoma works and what it offers. There's a white paper, by the way, if someone wants to read it.
It's a great white paper, by the way. It's very clearly stated, and it kind of talks about the trajectory of, the history of everything, and it's kind of leads to a very natural flow to Anoma, and I really enjoyed reading it. So I really suggest you guys check it out as well. But yeah, thanks for the entire like your trajectory and everything. It just really summarizes it all. I mean, you've been through it all. I think you've been, a huge contributor to the major like platforms out there, and also you ran a huge validator team, and now you're a founder of a big platform. So what, I mean, just on a personal level, like what did you gain out of this whole trajectory? I mean, you're still in the journey, of course, but like, I think you've really been in the history of it all, in terms of the layer ones, and, as you mentioned before, like running a validator is definitely pretty burdensome in many ways, right? And I've heard that a lot from other validators as well. Maybe you could share some of your lessons or some things that you've really learned during this whole journey. Yeah, that'd be really great.
Yeah, I mean, there are many things. For one, like, don't be ridiculous and like don't buy only Bitcoin. Like, it's like buying only one stock. It makes no sense in the real world, and so it makes no sense in crypto.
Right.
Privacy matters a lot more than people believe. I think to gain actual traction in the real world, privacy is an absolute must. And a lot of people phrase privacy as sort of opposed to governments, in the sense that it's like you versus the government. I really don't think so. I think the much stronger pitch for privacy is for like anti-fragility reasons. There are large threats to our financial systems, which come from very centralized financial systems being run by individual governments or controlled by individual governments. So I really think that like, if you're a small country like Switzerland, for example, your financial system is completely insecure against nation state attacks. There's a very strong reason why, as individual countries, you should be very interested in privacy for national defense reasons. So I think, and this gets lost in a lot of these conversations. But I think privacy is going to be tremendously important. And specifically actually true privacy achieved with zero knowledge proofs rather than like ring signatures and things like this. I think generally speaking, zero knowledge proofs are going to be humongous. And maybe the second aspect is there's a lot of maximalism in this space. And it never really made that much sense to me because, right, like I mentioned in the beginning, we don't have a one world government. Systems are a lot less fragile if individual components can fail without taking down the world economy. And I think this was, for example, something that really got me into Cosmos because it was like a realistic view of how the world works. That you don't need, that like not everyone is going to move towards ETH. We're going to see thousands probably of independent chains that will just interoperate with each other. Because currently everyone is trying to pitch themselves like, we are going to be the next AOL of the internet and just come to my walled garden, and my walled garden is going to be amazing and you're totally interoperable within that one walled garden.
Right.
But like something like IBC is like TCP IP, and it's just going to be different servers connecting to each other. And to the end users, this will mostly disappear, I think, over time. But yeah, if you sign out in this blockchain space, don't become a maximalist and learn cryptography and distributed systems.
Yeah, thank you so much for the insight. I really agree to the maximal, how do you pronounce that? Maximalization, right? Or maximalist? Yeah, maximalism. Oh. Yes, that kind of sentiment in the crypto space, and that's very toxic. And I myself, are in the same position as you are, in being, I guess, more general and neutral, and yeah. So I really believe in your thoughts as well. And you mentioned just briefly that privacy is more important than everyone thinks. I really think that too. And I interviewed many other privacy projects before, and I also noticed that it is really being undervalued. Can you give us an example, or can you kind of show us why privacy would be like very important, and also interoperability as well, how they can intertwine together. And I think, yeah, they're very important values. So could you explain more?
Yeah, privacy, sort of a really dumb example here is that I think we'd all be very comfortable if our bank accounts were open sourced. But effectively, if you send people crypto and you don't really pay attention to it, they will figure out your entire net worth. Depending on where you live, this is probably not a good idea. And I would be very careful. Like, I think a lot of people that have been around in crypto for a long time have started to use exchanges effectively as mixers. Because exchanges generate you clean addresses effectively. And it's like the bank kind of trust model all of a sudden. So I think, and really, because we sort of work in very long trajectories here, if we're talking 1 year, this is probably irrelevant. But if you're talking of these systems of being around 5, 10, 15 years, all of a sudden, if like actual value moves into crypto, like real world value moves into crypto, this starts mattering a lot more. Maybe the second aspect here is also like, it's kind of not exactly privacy, but something related to front running, because also a similar kind of crypto. I think front running in Ethereum has sort of morphed into this like strange academic problem called minor extractable value, and you're sort of trying to like design economic games around fixing this and write research papers about this. I think practically speaking, without perfect front running protection, none of these systems will gain major traction in the real markets. Like no real company is going to like actively start doing commerce on these systems if they're like all the time being front run. By the way, shameless plug, look into Ferveo. It's a protocol we released, DKG protocol, which mostly solves this. And I think we're the first people to do this. And this will also ship into Anoma, yeah.
Yes, I was just going to mention that actually. Molly just mentioned it. Why don't you just kind of share more about it? And just, for people who don't know what front running is, right? I think it may be a alien concept to some. So can you explain a bit on that, and just kind of about what Ferveo is all about as well?
Yeah, high level front running really means when you submit a transaction, you're leaking data because your transaction is public before it's included in a block, which means that I can observe this transaction and act upon this, and you don't have any chance to contact anymore, right? Because I have a game theoretic advantage once you've submitted your transaction. This is already possible for average users to watch the mempool, but this gets even stronger once it comes to miners or validators that secure these networks, because they can really arbitrarily order transactions. High level, how Ferveo works is that Ferveo is a distributed key generation protocol where all validators generate key shares. So they generate a private key shard. This jointly also generates one common public key. Transactions are encrypted against the public key. Only encrypted transactions are ordered into a block, and in the next block, the validators jointly decrypt them with the same thresholds as with Byzantine fault tolerance and consensus. So meaning that you need 2/3 to decrypt a transaction, which means that no individual validator can decrypt and front run you. Everyone would have to collude, and at that point, they may as well exploit proof of stake to begin with. So this is how Ferveo fully solves front running pretty much. You're still leaking like some metadata, because we need like how much fee you're willing to pay in order to make the system DOS resistant. But I think we're never going to get around this.
Yeah, I saw the recent blog post on introducing Ferveo, and is, so is a team building it as well together with Anoma, or is it like
this is integrated? This is not possible to really retrofit into other ledgers. Like theoretically, as a theoretical protocol, this works as a standalone thing. But yeah, this is shipped into Anoma, and it's going to be the first deployment of this kind of technology to prevent front running with Anoma mainnet.
Great. So the white paper was released on my birthday. I realized I saw the date. So that must mean something, right? That must mean something. In the white paper and also on the website, the main headline seems to be the undefining money. And that's a really like eye-catching phrase. What does that mean? And does that relate to the name Anoma, like by any chance? I mean,
yeah, so
anonymous.
That's
I guess
Anoma. So Anoma, undefining money, right? Anoma does not care what assets people want to hold or bring. Anoma is not designed to be a platform where assets are created. It's fundamentally designed to allow arbitrary assets to be used privately in both transfers as well as trading. So this is where the concept of undefining money comes from, because Anoma fundamentally removes also the need for a base money, a currency that everyone agrees upon, because you can do this end-party bartering, which you can't do on any other system really in an efficient way. This is where undefining money comes from. Like, if you want to pay in Beanie Babies in like a tokenized version of a Beanie Baby and want to use this as your store of value, you can, because with Anoma you can like hold this, and when you then like send someone a transfer, they can specify that they want to only receive ETH. And so you spend Beanie Babies and they receive ETH. And this is why, like, you, as a protocol, Anoma does not care about the asset that users want to hold. You can even pay transaction fees in dots, Bitcoin, like arbitrary assets as well, which is very different to what other systems have, because it seems really strange to me that you need like this random crypto coin to like use USDT privately. And Anoma doesn't have this restriction.
Then how is the native token used in this sense? Like how would you, what does that work in the system?
Yeah, so Anoma is proof of stake, so it's not proof of work. It's the native token XAN, most likely. I'm not sure about the ticker yet. We'll figure it out. We'll
ticker.
Find this out later.
Yes.
But the native asset is used as a proof of stake token to secure the system. So validators stake it. They earn both inflationary block rewards as well as transactions in the network, transaction fees in the network. One of the interesting things that we haven't yet seen in other proof of stake systems is that the native asset captures value which is proportional to the amount of assets on the protocol. Right, when you think about things like, for example, Neo or Solana or even Cosmos and Polkadot, the native asset is completely uncorrelated from what assets could be on top of these platforms. You have the same problem in ETH, and as ETH moves towards proof of stake, it may very well that like the market cap of all tokens on the platform out eclipses the value of ETH, because they are not connected in any fundamental way. With Anoma, the native asset also has access to effectively the fees generated by the trade volume. That's one aspect. The second is governance. So you get a say in how you upgrade these systems. But yeah, Anoma is not very much like Anoma is a very traditional proof of stake system. Honestly, proof of stake works great, and we've like pretty much solved proof of stake for most parts in the last 2 to 3 years. So Anoma is very much innovating around what you can do with assets on top of the platform rather than trying to like build a novel proof of stake system. Because honestly, the current ones we have are pretty fantastic.
I see. So, I mean, comparing like from, I guess, the interoperability aspect, I understand pretty well. Like the privacy platforms out there, there's probably a lot, right? And I know, are there any like similar platforms that you would consider as a competitor, or is this like the only one out there that's like one and only? I mean, I think you mentioned briefly on this, but you know, if you want to elaborate more on that, on the privacy aspect. More?
I mean,
technicality.
Yeah, maybe also like for the interoperability aspect here, like Anoma is not an interoperability platform. Right. Anoma is like not a routing hub for packets. I think this is unlikely to emerge in practice for any platform, by the way, that like platforms can charge rent for like routing data around blockchains. All these connections will be point to point. Like if you want to move a dot into Anoma, you move it Anoma, Polkadot to Anoma. If you want to move a near, it's near Anoma, and so on. So yeah, that's on the interoperability part. On the privacy part, there are some. I mean, there's things like Zcash. There's things like Monero, but they're fundamentally tied to like specific assets, as in like ZEC, and they don't offer multi-asset privacy at all. So you always have to like, in order to gain privacy, you have to like opt into a weird monetary policy. For, like, my milk is never going to be priced in ZEC either. It's like not going to happen. So you know, there are large trade-offs there. I think there are some in the Ethereum world where they're sort of mixers, like Tornado Cash, for example. But Tornado Cash is fairly limited because you can, like, your privacy set is just very, very limited because your privacy set is asset specific. Like I can tell whether you are using it with ETH or some like other ETH asset, like ERC20 token. With Anoma, an external observer can't tell the difference whether I'm selling my house or I'm using BTC to pay for coffee or using USDT to like book a flight. This is completely invisible to an external observer. There's some people trying to build private bridges, which I think is probably not a good idea actually. Because I think honestly, they're also like, I think a lot of teams are trying to currently like monetize bridges between, and like bridges aren't going to be monetized. Like if it's BFT on either side, or if it's like fast finality on either side, the bridges are going to be costless. No one is going to pay you to like send an asset from Anoma to Nia. So, but yeah, people are trying to build private bridges, which I think is terrifying because bridges are probably like one of the most important points in the systems to be auditable, and you're not gaining that much by making them private. Like you want to have state transactions to be private on individual ledgers, but when you move assets between systems, you want a fairly obvious audit record that is easy for people to understand. Yeah, that's it. I think there's like I honestly think this entire interoperability space, like not interoperability space, but this entire space of you can have independent chains that don't have to reissue all assets, has been fairly underexplored so far, and we're just seeing the beginning of this. So I think the next couple of years are going to be incredibly exciting as like more and more independent chains just starting up, and you don't have to reissue all assets, and assets just flow freely between these systems, and users can use them for like users can take the assets wherever they want to use them.
Right. And I think like you kind of mentioned about the NFT part as well, and like how it can really exchange for another, like just cryptocurrency, just back and forth. And I think it's really fit for this currently NFT friendly environment these days. It's kind of bloom, you know, it's going to bloom very soon. So
actually, this is a good point. I forgot about this. No one provides any privacy to NFTs because they're all like NFTs. You can think of them like individual one unit currencies, right?
Yes.
So if your privacy solution is built around the idea that you need to have a lot of transactions for a single asset to hide it, it's pointless for an NFT. So with Anoma, it's invisible whether you have a housing NFT or a Bitcoin in the system.
Interesting. Yeah, I was looking into like, so I did my search on like the new upcoming NFT related platforms out there, and I feel like I should include Anoma as well. It is, I mean, it's definitely, I think, useful for a lot of the, people trying to, facilitate NFTs and the usage of it and trade. So yeah, I think it's definitely going to be inevitable as well. There was a very complicated term that I would like some explanation on it. Multi-denomination zero knowledge transfer circuit. How does that work?
Right. Yes, it's the multi-asset shield pool. Like a less unwieldy name is the multi-asset shield pool or MASP. You can think of this as an extension to the Zcash sapling circuit, in the sense that like sapling provides perfect single asset privacy that you can have as an external observer. What gets encrypted is the destination, like sender, destination, and amount. And in the multi-asset shield pool, you also encrypt the asset type, which is how you get multi-asset privacy.
Right. That's just basically.
Or also, if you're interested in like all these kind of trusted setups, we are probably going to run another large-scale trusted setup sometime later this year.
Oh, very interesting. Good to know. You're just literally answering all my questions. Like, I'll ask more in detail about what you're planning in the later in the year. So there was a CoinDesk article that came out about Anoma raising 6.75 million private token sale. Congratulations on that. Many things to congratulate you on. What was that experience like for you? I mean, you've had a very good list of people who invested in Anoma. But I can't imagine like how exciting that must be, but stressful as well. But can you tell me more about experience and what your plans are in the future as well in terms of raising or?
Yeah, so this was a couple of months ago. Yeah, we sort of concluded the first private sale with a couple of people that we knew we wanted backing the project because so we handpicked the people we wanted to work with in this first private round because we could. So it was very nice. And I think we really picked the people that fundamentally believe that privacy and this interoperability aspect is going to be big. So we try to work with people that can really help push the project along there. The experience was very stressful. Like Corona is an interesting time. So you're like doing all of this virtually. I think we had the good fortune that we knew a bunch of people beforehand, so we knew who to work with.
Sure.
But honestly, if you don't really know who you want to work with and who you want to pick as your investors, I think you're going to end up with a lot of garbage because like since then I had to shut down most of my channels because I keep getting spammed with people that like offer me some weird token pumping services.
Sure.
The space has become interesting in that regard, I have to say.
This year, yes.
Maybe in terms of future steps, we haven't distributed like even a fraction of the Genesis block. So we're looking into launching Anoma later, either late this year or early next year, most likely. And so there will most likely be other opportunities for fundraisers for the general public to get involved, for tested incentivization programs to happen.
Great, good to know. But yeah, it's been a very interesting process for you during COVID times, and you've known the team members already, so it's not like you have to kind of But you have it was a bit very like how did the team members come together? Not that like the founders, but like I know the founders were you've already worked with them before, but like did the team like other team members work with you before and you got them together during COVID, or was it like
so we knew a couple of the people because they'd worked with us on previous on both Cryptium as well as Metastate. But it's been interesting. There are people we've hired like a year ago, which we've never met in person. So which is kind of very interesting because we now have someone in Rio. And so like the group is expanding. So I think right now we're between Vancouver, Rio, and Taiwan.
That's
and
great.
like in the US, both East, West Coast, in Europe.
They're everywhere.
I don't know anyone from Australia yet. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to finally being able to meet everyone in person because honestly, I think remote companies are going to win by far. I think that's not even close actually. Remote first is just always going to win because you don't have to worry about offices and how you like people relocating. Your hiring pool just became global instead of like trying to figure out who lives within an hour driving out of the office. But I have to say, doing a team retreat every quarter is very helpful, and I'm looking forward to being able to return to that.
You should do a retreat in Asia at some point. Yeah, you should come to Asia.
No, we have a great team retreat location. Countryside in East Germany. Yeah, it's like an old, what do you call this in English? Like a kind of manor house that got converted into like a co-working, co-living space.
Oh, so. Nice. Oh, it's already fixed, huh?
So far, I mean, maybe we'll discover another couple of great locations.
Yeah, I mean, like, because like I was amazed at how you got to, you know, found a team, like a huge project during COVID, and just kind of, you know, came all together. It's starting really well, and you know, it's just a very amazing experience for you. So not a bad time, you know, to spend COVID, huh? So I think it's really
great. That's true. My COVID experience could have been worse.
Yes, of course. And I think, you know, 2021, we are halfway into it. And, you know, how are you trying to expand your ecosystem? I mean, you've had team members all around the world, but still, I think the ecosystem is going to play a crucial part in, you know, expanding the Anoma framework and ecosystem. So can you tell me more about like maybe what you're trying to do in terms of expanding that, maybe hiring more or getting a developer ecosystem, anything like that?
Yeah, so one important point on Anoma is that Anoma is not sort of making the bet that the smart contract platforms made, which is like we have a base platform and we do nothing useful besides this, and people have to like come and build applications on top of it. And only if they come and build applications and it becomes useful. Anoma doesn't have this problem. Anoma is useful from day one without any external developer deploying something necessarily. This is not to say that there's a great opportunity to build interesting, for example, private trading circuits. And deploy them as validity predicates. So I think we're going to start setting this up towards later this year. I'm attending my first conference most likely in Paris for EthCC. So I think EthCC is going to be the first physical conference happening this year actually in the crypto space. So I'm pretty excited about that. We're always hiring across the world in terms of people that want to run meetups and people that want to just like help grow the community. We're going to start the testnet programs in probably like a month or 2 months. Sometimes like then we're looking to get involved in run validators and start playing around with the protocols. There's lots more interesting things you can actually be running than just the validators. You can also be running matchmakers, nodes in the intent order books and the intent gossip system to like gossip people's trades around. So yeah, there's lots of room for people to get involved in trying to battle test the software.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a ton of interest from Korea as well. I think I mentioned this to you before, but like there's a, you know, huge group called Zero Knowledge Seoul, and, you know, they do research on privacy related research. So yeah, I think it's a great fit in many ways. So, I mean, Asia definitely has a privacy dedicated group. So I think it'll be great to have that expanded over there as well. And are you at all concentrated on Asia at some point? Trying to, you know, maybe come to Asia and to educate more on privacy, and just, I think the emphasis is very low in terms of privacy in general. And yeah, I think it'd be great to have your presence there. And do you plan to?
No, I'm so excited to go to Asia. I miss Korea. I miss China. I honestly miss traveling at this point. I never thought I'd say this like 2 years ago. But yeah, no, I'm very much looking forward to being able to talk at meetups and tell people about like how privacy works and why it's a good idea to, even if you have nothing to hide, like not leak all your metadata to the entire world forever. I think for us, certainly the focus will be on Asia. Probably also Europe. Like Europe seems to, especially Germany, seems to be a lot more worried about leaking privacy. Like in all the other countries, mobile payment solutions like contactless payments went up during COVID. In Germany, nothing happened. It just stayed flat. People like cash. Just like, it's an interesting discovery that I made. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I think certain markets definitely have and according to like what the government's doing, I think that, yeah, it really does affect. And I think COVID has really kind of made people sensitive towards privacy in general in many cases. So it's a great timing for your project in general. And it's just getting started. So I'm very excited. What is your ultimate vision? Well, it's a very grand word, but for Anoma, and how do you imagine the ecosystem looking like in 5 years? And just in general, like not only for Anoma, but just like in general for interoperable chains. And yeah, and what will it take to get there? Because I think we're still, the market's very industry is very interesting right now. And just what, as a person who's been in the space for some time, what do you see like in the next 5 years or so?
Yeah, so what I expect the Anoma ecosystem to look like well, let's start maybe with a long-term vision here, which is that Anoma can really be used to as a global coordination tool. It allows you to, via the unparty bartering system, to incorporate the cost of carbon into supply chains, for example. So this is very, very long-term. Once a lot of the business processes are starting to become digitized effectively on blockchains, you can use Anoma to construct a fairly, incredibly large multi-party commitment schemes towards incorporating the cost of carbon, the production of Nike shoes, for example, or to incorporate to try to, for example, incentivize people to claim back CO2 from the atmosphere. And you can opt in if everyone in your country opts in, and if and only if everyone else does the same thing, you start incorporating this carbon extraction into your trading volume, for example. So I think this is really the ultimate vision, that Anoma can help solve large-scale coordination problems. Because currently the tools we have really suck at this. The tools we have are designed around Westphalian nation states, and Westphalian nation states are terrible at solving global problems because they're fundamentally designed around locality as a unit, as a sort of coordination point. So I think that's one aspect. The way I think the blockchain ecosystem will look much more like the real world, in the sense that I think, for example, also the way Anoma scales is not by saying we need to fix this technically. This is mostly a social problem how we scale. So for example, if a lot of World of Warcraft players end up using Anoma, there's no reason why they shouldn't be using an Anoma, World of Warcraft Anoma specifically, to settle all the World of Warcraft trades, and only when they need to move out of this ledger, they move via the global ledger. Same for transactions in Shanghai and Berlin don't need to be globally ordered. It makes no sense why we need to establish a global ordering of all coffee transactions in Berlin with all coffee transactions in Shanghai. So with Anoma, you may very well see a local Berlin instance, a local Shanghai instance, and assets can just flow freely. This applies to all blockchains in general, by the way. I think we are starting to see lots and lots of independent chains that just communicate with each other. And I think really the time for maximalists is going to be over relatively soon, or at least in the long-term future. So that's what I would expect the space to look like. Really, that World of Warcraft players are going to have their own chain. Berlin is going to have their own chain. Some smart contracts are running globally as well, because there is space for a global smart contract platform, for example. And I don't know who's going to win this war yet. But there's also space for a local smart contract platform. I think we're going to see local currencies actually. I think because Bitcoin and all these virtual assets are great stores of value potentially, but they aren't great transactional currencies because they're not fundamentally tied to local economies. If I buy milk in a store, this is not going to be priced in Bitcoin. It's going to be priced in something that is locally tied to my economy. So I think we'll see the emergence of local currencies because we can just provide the tools to use them as cash-like equivalents, and to give them the ability to be easily transferable and tradable across the world. So a lot of the advantages that sort of network effects around currencies have are going to slowly fade, which is going to be great, I think. Yeah.
Oh, that's a great insight. I think the siloed aspect of many blockchains out there, and I think really need to be fixed. Well, not to be fixed, but it has to be resolved in some way. And I think I think it was a great analogy to say that, blockchains will be like kind of like nation states. And I think I can imagine that. I can imagine that future. And, as for Korea, we use like Kakao as the main like messenger, and like we use Kakao Pay as the main like, I guess, the application to send funds. And I think it's really domestically very, very convenient, but when you go outside the country, it's just like you can never use it. And I think that's a problem for, I think, every other country, because it's just not becoming like it's not transcending borders. Although I think locally it's very convenient, but still I think that's the transcending aspect needs to be solved. And it's really an interesting insight that you have. So very excited for the future of Anoma, and it's going to be very applicable to a lot of things. So thank you so much for sharing your insights. And do you have any last messages to say to the viewers or to whoever's watching? Where do you get your resources?
I actually like plug this. We're always looking for talent. If you're interested in distributed systems, cryptography, community management, communication, explaining difficult technical concepts to people, feel free to reach out to me. You can find us Adrian@anoma.network. Just send me an email. And I think really we should. I think generally for like the blockchain space, we shouldn't be forgetting that like we should be trying to like solve real world problems to some extent, and we shouldn't vilify things. For example, like central bank currencies. I think like I'm very comfortable with, for example, the Swiss franc. I'd just be happier if it was issued on its own chain and I could bring it into like the other chains that want to use it on.
Yep.
I think maximalism isn't going to work because humans don't work this way. The problem is it sells very well on Twitter, but like Twitter also maps poorly to the real world in terms of how humans resolve conflicts and how humans engage with each other. Like Twitter is very much a weird sandbox. And I think the future is private. Honestly, there are lots of dystopias we're heading towards. If we don't allow individuals to reclaim their financial sovereignty and privacy, and really this is the goal with Anoma, that like we give individuals the tools to like participate in the financial economy privately and with sovereignty.
Thanks for the thank you for your insight. And I think it's really necessary to have that mindset for the people in the industry and also people who are watching this space, because I think people are just really concentrating on like what projects to look at and just looking one by one, but really it's about the value and the problem that we want to solve to the greater society. So thanks so much for giving us the bigger picture. And it's so great to connect again. Looking forward to hear back from Anoma, how it's growing. So thank you so much. Thanks for your time.